The 100% Wild podcast is brought to you by OnX Hunt, the nation's #1 GPS hunting app. Download today in the Google Play and App Store.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast. I'm Tim Chelsvik.
I'm Matt Drury.
You are Matt Drury. And you've got a tale to tell, my friend.
Finally. So the last podcast we did, I was talking about how I really, for whatever reason, I hadn't felt satisfied yet.
Yeah.
Even though we killed. So I just picked this back up from where I got the Euro mount done over the weekend. And there was a reason I was there because I was dropping something else off. But I
delivery.
felt, and now that I look at it again, I'm like, why wouldn't I have been satisfied with this deer? He's awesome.
It's a great buck.
And it was all because of this deer we called 2S2.
That's haunted your season.
He's haunted me. 10, 11 encounters, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, laughable, frankly. It's like, all right, how bad of a hunter can you be? So
a comedy of errors.
We started seeing him early October, I think somewhere on the 3rd and then the 4th and then the 6th. And on the 6th, I should have killed him. We've documented this on the podcast. And if you haven't listened to it, go back and just listen, because about every podcast this season we've talked
there's some
about,
travail in there.
Yeah, where I encountered him or couldn't find him or blah, blah, blah. So we devised a new plan here in the late season, which we talked about. And we set up that ground blind for kind of a southerly wind. And I was ready to push it even for like a northwest wind. Yeah. Northeast really wasn't great for it, but I was ready to just say, end of the season. Yeah. I still got a muzzleloader in my hand. We're going to the ATA show, so I won't be able to really hunt that last week as much as I would want. So now or never. And so to do this, we were going to sit this muddy soft side blind that we have on the standing beans that I had paid the farmer to leave, like an acre of beans. And we were just going to observe for the evening. It was Friday night. We were going to observe. And the next day we were going to take Cameron in with us. And I wanted to see how the deer reacted to the blind. If we saw him do what he had been doing the week before, or actually that earlier in that week, I wanted to just see what was happening.
Sure.
So we're sitting there. We got in early. It was a great, perfect conditions wise, it felt pretty good. It wasn't super cold, but it was cooler than the last few days because it warmed up to like 50 in the mid 50s last week.
Yeah, it's kind of unseasonably warm.
So at that point, any cool front is a big event. It's like,
hey, cool fronts are relative.
Yeah, it was like low 40s and average temperatures 39 degrees for that time of year, but it was still cooler than mid 50s, high 50s, whatever. So anyways, we go in, we sit there, we don't see anything like all night. Well, we had been getting more and more predator pictures on my cameras, which is kind of common during the late season for me. Is all of a sudden,
in general, it seems to be the case.
Yeah, coyotes pick up. All of a sudden, we get more bobcats, whatever the case may be. So
Bigfoot.
Yeah, Bigfoot. Every night we're there, we hear them start sounding off too. The coyotes, man, all over the farm. So we thought, well, maybe they're getting skittish, or they pushed them out, or what? Whatever the case may be. So we're sitting there, and finally, it was overcast when we started, and it started to clear out. I thought I didn't have hopes of seeing our shooter by any stretch of the imagination. I thought maybe we'll start seeing some deer because it was that slow. We weren't seeing anything. And so sky's kind of clear. There really wasn't much of a wind, it felt like. And there maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes left in the afternoon. All of a sudden, this beautiful little 10-pointer that we had been passing the last couple times out. Yeah. He fed out from where my other blind was, my muddy bull blind, across this point where we hung a tree stand, all for 2S2.
Yeah, I remember that adventure.
And then he came straight to those beans and he was on a straight line.
Yeah.
It was like
no does in the field.
Nothing.
Weird to see a buck first.
It was just out of nowhere. He came straight across to us. And so I thought, well, I still didn't think we'd see a shooter, but I thought at least this is a nice end to the night. And at that point, I thought maybe some deer would come out on the field once you see one, you start seeing more, especially there at the very end of the evening. Well, so a couple does kind of start feeding out, I think, from the other end. And then out of nowhere, through that point, that little timber point, I can, especially now with the leaves off, I can see through there to the other side because it's a field, that bean field, that cut bean field is on that other side too. And I see a body, I throw up my Leupold's, and all of a sudden I'm like, shooter. I didn't.
You didn't know it was him yet?
Not exactly yet, but I knew just, it was a shooter, body, and then kind of the mask, the antlers. It's a shooter, and it's like, oh, 2S2, it's him. And Scott was telling me that he thought I was messing with him. I mean, that's kind of how A, our season went, and B, our night was going. It just kind of sucked.
Sure.
And so he was wasting no time. He come across that point, and he beelined it straight for the beans as well.
Weird.
And these beans, it's not like it's been this magic bullet for me like I thought it would be all for the late season, mostly because the temperatures have been too warm, but it was exactly the reason we did that.
It makes you start to think you know what you're doing.
It actually worked this time. And he fed to the beans, and I had my Traditions muzzleloader in hand and waiting for him. Like, he was basically facing me walking in.
Yeah.
And then it really wasn't that long. It felt like an eternity, but it was maybe 3 minutes between the time I saw him. And then he gave me a broadside shot. I feel like he was maybe 80-ish yards. Cause when he first came out from the point, I remember range finding him. He was at 120 and he came in a decent amount. So as he was feeding, in my mind, I'm like, all right, should we let him get closer or take the shot? Or all of a sudden a few does are starting. I remember seeing out of the corner of my eye from the bedding area to my right, the does are starting to filter out, which is never
more eyes and noses.
Yeah. And everybody knows the does, what's crew.
Spooky.
Yeah. So Scott at one point goes, should I zoom back to you to get we always like to do a kind of zoom back and kind of point of reference. Here's the hunter, and then zoom back in. It's connection. And I was like, no, just stay on him.
We can't screw this up.
And then those does came out, and he started kind of looking around. I was like, all right, I'm going to shoot him. Are you ready? He's ready. I'm ready. And so squeeze the trigger, and boom, the smoke filled our blind. There was no wind. And if the wind would have been blowing the way it should have been blowing, it should have kind of passed by us quick enough, but it just hung there. And I didn't see him. I didn't see anything. I was like, did he drop? And Scott, by that time, Scott's following him. He took off like he got shot out of a cannon.
Yeah. And
he took off running across those cut beans to the other side of the timber, and Scott was following him. He's like, no, he's running. So I look over, and I finally got on him. I think my binoculars or something, maybe just visually, I don't remember. And
did you flip your duct tape guns over?
No, my second Traditions was sitting there just in case I needed the follow-up shot, but it didn't, he took off so quickly. And really we do that in case they drop. In our experience with a muzzleloader, if they drop right away, they're usually not dead. And they a lot of times have a chance to get up, and like, you think you killed them, they're dead. And then all of a sudden they get up and run off the field. Yeah. So we just like to be safe. Better safe than sorry. So anyway, so he ran across the field, and I saw at the top of his rack as he crossed over the hump start to wobble a little bit, and that made me feel great. But I didn't know where I shot. I felt really good about it. I felt solid about it. It was as about of a chip shot as you could get at 80 yards with a scope, and you know what I mean?
Sure.
It didn't feel far. So anyway, so we're sitting in the blind, and by this time it's, darkness kind of falls upon us, and we zip up the windows on that blind. And so I was like, all right, I text Mark and Terry, tell them I shot him. Cause right before that, I think it was right before that, or right after that, I think it was right before it, Mark was hunting with the catch stream child Mason, and he had a real nice deer in front of him. He pulls the trigger, and for whatever reason, we've been having issues with our primers not going off. And it happened to him, and everybody was just devastated. So I looked at my phone. I saw that this was after I shot him, and I replied, "Oh man, I hate it for him. Hey, I just shot 2S2, and so." It was a text message between Taylor, Mark, and Terry and myself. Okay. And so at that point, we look at the footage. It's hard to tell, between the smoke, and then the deer jumped like 3 feet in the air, and then Scott jumps a little bit, and I couldn't tell where the shot was. So we did film what we had, and I texted it to the guys, and like we always do, and kind of got their opinions. And Mark's like, I think he's dead. And Bobby Culbertson thought the same thing. That, everybody thought if we all were seeing the right thing, that
it's nice to get that affirmation.
Yeah, he was dead. Go get him. And so by the time we got everything packed up and got through that text messaging and all that stuff, it may have been 45 minutes. And so we get out and we go look for blood, and I'm not seeing any blood, but I'm not 100% sure I was in the right spot where he was. I thought I was, but we're not seeing any blood. So Scott and I kind of split up, and it's pitch black. So we got the lights out and we're looking. He goes one way, I go another, and we really don't, we follow him where we thought he went. And I looked at, I earmarked a tree that I thought was this tree that I last saw him at. I couldn't find any blood. So then we just start kind of looking for a body.
Yeah.
And Scott's like, hey, come over here. He found him first.
Cool.
And he's just in the timber, literally belly up.
Okay.
And
big white belly showing.
Yeah. And maybe 15 yards into the timber. So he expired immediately.
So how far do you think his run was?
Maybe 100.
It's amazing they can go so far after
maybe
such devastation.
And maybe about that. Well, anyways, when we walked up on him, I look and I'm like, shoot, the blood trail was huge. Like he must have come in further to the right than the path we were on. We must have missed it. Okay. There was blood everywhere. It was spraying out in the timber on all those leaves. I could see it easily. And so we walk up on him, and the coyotes had already gotten to him. I swear to you. I was like, what the? I was looking and I was like, what?
They must listen for the gun going off.
I couldn't figure it out. At first I was like, Scott, look at that. His back end, they got to his back end already.
Unreal.
I was like, they already got to him. It couldn't have been 45 minutes. Jeez. I swear to you. And when we're in the woods, all of a sudden they're all yipping and howling. And it's like, they smell blood here. They're eating it. Let's get the hell out of here.
He's got scared.
It's a spooky feeling.
I had a friend that used to be terrified of coyotes.
I'm not really scared because I know they're scared of humans. We have lights and we're talking. But it was an eerie feeling. They were right there.
There's another predator
before you.
Yeah. Found them before you did.
Yeah. So that was interesting. I hated it, but I mean, we couldn't have got there any faster than we got there. I was amazed, frankly. And it showed me if we would have waited much longer, I mean, say you weren't sure about your hit and you say, all right, let's give them 3 or 4 hours. He would have been
like Aaron Bennett's deer.
Yeah, it would have been toast. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, we tag the deer, we drag him out of there, and then you got all the work you got to do, and the pictures and the video stuff we got to do, and field dressing him and blah 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 blah. But it was kind of surreal, honestly. It was such a long season of chasing this deer and trying literally. I don't think there was anything we didn't try that we could have. Like I felt like we left it all out there.
The buck decoy setup that you guys put together. It's nothing more elaborate than that. Yeah,
we tried everything we could think of. We moved blinds, we popped up blinds, we hung tree stands, and finally, out of the same spot that basically, he was in that area ever since we encountered him on October the 6th and screwed up.
Yeah.
After that little area where those beans were in that point, that's where we encountered him almost every single time, other than a few in late December where he was on the neighbors and then crossed over. So, we kept hunting smart. We did hunt hard, but we kept hunting smart, played the wind for the most part. We pushed it a few times here and there. But I think it was just more of a persistence issue than anything. And in years past, maybe I didn't have the same drive to make it happen, or, I don't know. Like I said, it was always a sink or swim this year because Dad's place was wiped out from EHD.
Sure.
So this was, usually I tag 2 bucks a year, whether it's one in Illinois or one in Missouri. That's usually I get about 2 a year. And as we kind of look for the TV show, how many each person hopefully will get in a year. That's always kind of my projection. I think I can get 2 down for the year. So it was satisfying.
Came down to the wire.
Yeah. I felt like I was pulling my weight. I learned a lot through this, this season. And I felt like, hey, I'm finally gratified. Finally,
you are satisfied.
I am. Yeah.
Walk away from deer season with your head held high.
Yeah. And I'm sure it took a big toll at home. I was gone a time. We were talking off camera here. I think somewhere between mid 30 to lower 40s is how many times I hunted. I mean, it was a lot for a young family and, our work obligations. It was a lot.
And it kind of reminds us that there's an aspect of deer hunting being a numbers game also. Yeah. You got to keep after it.
Yeah. And we hear that point about, if I got to hunt every day, I could kill the deer Mark and Terry kill. I 100% think that's an incorrect statement. Yes, you will have some great opportunities, but that doesn't mean you can make it happen. It just doesn't. There's a lot that goes into it. And those guys put in, just a little bit that Scott and I did and the 30, 45 times we hunted and how much we, tried doing this or tried doing that. They do that every day, all season and put not just themselves on deer, but Catch a Dream kids, their camera guys, guests,
guide people,
nephews, grandsons, whatever. Like they're basically little mini outfitters for friends and family besides himself. It's not that easy. I mean, I can't hardly get on one for just myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I do know.
Well, yeah. And I think about it like that, like, all right, think about how hard it was for me to just do what I did this year. For me personally, it felt hard. Yeah. I couldn't imagine trying to get other people in expectations that they are going to kill in the 3 days they come into camp. Like,
and I mean, Gary Levac, some of these people have very, very little, Mike Matheny, very little time to hunt. And so you want to make
Dustin
the most
Lynch,
of it.
Yeah. The Catch a Dream child. It just, I don't know. So I felt a lot of respect, even in that sense, like, God, these guys really work their butts off to do what 100%. They do. So, and a little bit of a newfound respect there. I mean, I always knew it, but it was,
you hated them before.
Yeah. It was interesting to think about it and, kind of step outside.
The box. And it's not, I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna feel bad for you, but it's just a ton of work.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of times without much payoff.
Yeah. Well, paid off twice out of whatever, 40 days.
Yeah. Yeah. You almost don't want to go into counting.
Yeah. And maybe more. I need to count it up just so for my sake of knowing, like, all right, how can I get better next year?
Yeah.
Getting better next year would be making the shot on October the 6th that I never got off. So
hindsight's 2020.
It would have been a different season, but I wouldn't have learned it nearly as much. And it was very gratifying. I'll say that. I felt like, okay, I finally proved I can do it.
There's a behavioral psychologist. I don't remember who, it may have been Piaget, who said that we don't learn by doing, we learn by thinking about doing. So what you're talking about is you have the experience and you debrief in your head and you think, okay, what do I need to do differently? And that's really a big part of the whitetail, just bow hunting in general, is learning from every time you're in the field and then processing that and figuring out what you're going to do differently next time.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. It's fun.
A caveat to all this, Cameron was highly upset with me.
Yeah.
So
supposed to kill him with him.
Yeah. So like I said, we were in there that night as an MRI mission for the next night to go in there. And I had been, he was upset with me from the weekend before because it was warm and I didn't take him with me. Well, that's the day we set up that ground blind and I knew it would be a long day and I didn't know what to expect on the hunt itself. I thought we'd have deer around us and I just didn't want to mess it up. So I told him then, hey, this next weekend on Saturday, I'm going to take you hunting, buddy. No, we're going to go. We're going to do this together. Well,
cats in the cradle and the silver spoon.
Yeah. So this happened Friday. And so Randa, I told her and she's like, oh my gosh, Cameron's going to be devastated because at home, he's already mad that I'm just hunting without him on Friday. It was school. He couldn't come with me, you know? And so she starts hinting around like, hey, well, what if Dad killed tonight? Like, that'd be awesome. That'd be cool.
Would you be happy?
He's tried so hard. And he's like, what? Did he kill? Like, he's 5. He's 5 years old. He saw right through it. It's like, I don't know.
What would you think if he did?
So she asked me, she's like, should I tell him? I was like, yeah, I sent him the video and the picture. And he wasn't thrilled about it. And so I FaceTimed them. Scott had to run back to the barn and grab something and come back. And so I stayed with the deer so the coyotes wouldn't come back.
Right.
And so I FaceTimed him while I was there and showed him the deer, and literally was basically in tears almost, like the I'm happy for
so your high goes like, yeah. And then,
so I was like, hey buddy, tomorrow we'll bring him back out. We'll do pictures together, and then you'll get to spend all day with me, and we'll go take him to the processor, blah, 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 blah. And Randa said he stayed up till it wasn't like 12 o'clock till I got home that night. He stayed up till like 11 waiting up for me, in the bed.
Yeah.
And he wanted to make sure that I woke him when I got home, and the dude wouldn't leave my side basically.
That's awesome.
Next day we take the pictures, and it was kind of cool. We ended up, I had this picture of me and Dad when I was a kid. I was probably more like 7, but where Dad's next to this like spike or a fork that he killed, and it's the back of the tailgate, and then I'm next to Dad.
Yeah.
It's just one of our father-son pictures from way back in the day. So we tried to recreate that with Cameron, and it was fun to try to do that, but the sun was getting him in his eyes. So he couldn't quite open his eyes
for squinty.
Zero of the pictures, but we got to do some fun stuff. And then I took him to this processor that we go to, and it's an Amish facility. And so that was interesting for him to get to see that. And just how many deer they had.
Yeah. He got an experience.
He did. But still, even as of last night, he was still like, yeah, I guess it was a good weekend, but I think it would have been better if we would have hunted, Dad. Like he just kept jabbing me.
It's incredible how sophisticated they are.
Yeah. So yesterday as a family, kind of like, cause I'm getting ready to leave tomorrow for the ATA.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be gone again. And so Raina wanted to take the kids to Disney on Ice, this weekend. So Cameron was like, I don't want to go to that. I want to go hunting with Dad, and all this stuff. And I was like, buddy, we need to go do this. Let's go. It'll be fun. So he wanted to wear his Bass Pro shirt and his Jury Outdoors hat. He looked like a little Hoosier there at Disney on Ice, but I couldn't get him.
No,
and I was fine with it. It was great, but it was kind of funny because he's like, well, I don't want to go. I'd rather go hunting,
I'll go, but I won't like
all the pictures. He was kind of snarling. Like whatever, but we had fun. So we got some family time in over the weekend.
Sure.
But he's like, Dad, what was the best? Every night we talk about the best part of our day. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what was the best part of your day? I was like, hey, just being with you guys. He's like, best part of my day would have been if we would have went hunting. I was like, all right, don't tell your mom.
That's brutal and hilarious at the same time.
And he knows, he's like, so are we going to go before the season ends? I was like, I don't think I'll have time, buddy. And I was like, maybe, but don't count on it. I was like, turkey season's coming up.
Does he have any interest in like chasing squirrels or something?
I've never introduced him to it. I don't know much about it. I mean, I'd be kind of like, all right, we shot it now. What do I do with it? So, I have not, but maybe that's the next step.
Squirrel season runs a little longer.
Yeah. So anyhow, it just showed me I need to continue to bring him out to the woods, and
he's not going to slow down in his desire to want to be
Which
out.
is great. That's what I want. He just wants to be with his dad. He wants to do what his dad does. And
no doubt.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I need to usher him in more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you got to balance the strike for sure.
Yeah. So anyways, that was the story. 10 or 11 encounters. He's finally, I kept saying he was playing chess and I only knew how to play checkers.
Yeah. So. Well, eventually, what my dad used to say, the sun shines on a dog's butt every now and again.
Yeah.
So
am I the dog or am I the sunshine? Or
let's move on.
I'm the butt.
Question of the day.
All right, let's do it.
I can read it if you'd like.
All right. Question of the day. Sorry.
You're just on a high still.
Forgot my role. Question of the day is brought to you by Sportsman's Channel, the new home of Winchester and Drury's Natural Born, in your destination for everything red, wild, and blue.
This is from Mark, Quincy, Illinois.
Hi, my name is Mark Gabriel, and I'm from Quincy, Illinois. My question is, when bow hunting, what is the maximum distance you would take a shot at a white-tailed deer? And do you prefer heavy arrows for penetration or lighter arrows for the speed? Thank you guys for all you do for the hunting community. Appreciate it.
So this is not a cut and dry question for me. the distance factor. To me, it depends on how quiet it is.
Sure.
How with the nature of the deer, are they a little spooky or are they just heads down feeding, no big deal? The farthest shot I've taken on a deer was 52 yards, and the deer had no idea I was there, and it was a good kill. But there are deer that have been at 30 that are just way too spooky that I felt like I wanted them in closer. So
yeah.
I set my stands up. I try to get within my bow stand, try to get within 20 yards or less of a deer, and 30, 35 is really pushing it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. And that was the whole issue with this particular deer 2S2 all season long. After I messed up on October the 6th, he was 30 yards. That was a great, comfortable shot. I was ready for it. Mm-hmm. But other than that, he was always at 50 yards. Almost every time it was 50 yards and walking away. And I know plenty of people that could make that shot all day, but I'm not one of them, or I didn't feel comfortable, or it was too low light, or there was always, if the conditions were perfect on my best day, because every day before I go out for the hunt, I shoot my bow, and it wasn't always pretty this year. So there were days where I just didn't have the confidence at 50, to do that. And like you said, to make an ethical shot, I felt like I need to get closer. And so for me, it's more of I probably 35, maybe 40 is where, hey, I feel really comfortable out to 35 for sure all day. Yeah. 40, it would be very conditional for me, whether or not, it's like, all right, are there does around me? Are they spooky?
How you been shooting?
Yeah, exactly.
What the wind's looking like?
I don't know if it's as much about the arrow, or if that's just a follow-up question for him. Do we prefer a faster, heavier arrow? Mine's a pretty small in diameter arrow, but I get a lot of penetration with it. Sure. But I don't shoot fast in general because of my draw length. I mean, I'll shoot 62-ish, 63 pounds, but my draw length's like 27 and a half. Yeah. So I just don't shoot very fast in general. So that kind of factors in for me as well on distance. Cause my arrow, and it's always been this way. Like I got a 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 yard pin. I know some guys are like, hey, I'm good out to 30 with one pin. I can't. My arrow drops so much. I can't do that. So to me, it also says, hey, look, the further out, like there's more chances of screwing up. So
100%. Yeah.
I'm not shooting flat, I guess is my point. And flat, fast, and far isn't my thing.
Yeah, which
it's like boom,
it's gonna lob out there. Yeah. Which is kind of fun to see. I like seeing them arc a little bit. And there was a time where I wanted the fastest arrow possible because I wanted to be able to use, because for a long time I shot a multi-pin sight. I wanted to be able to just use my 20 for my 30, maybe hold a little higher. Anymore though, especially after talking with Blake Shelby, who is an arrow aficionado, and some of my other friends that really geek out over arrow builds, I think actual mass and the ability for that arrow to continue penetrating that deer is so much more important to me. I bumped my draw weight up a little bit this year. I'm shooting 90% let off, so I lose a little bit of speed there. But I would rather have the oomph in the arrow. So if I touch, maybe the shoulder blade a little bit, that it's got some more energy to push through. So I would default to a heavier arrow. Plus, like if you hit a twig or something, if you've got more mass in that arrow, I think it's going to deflect less. Yeah. So that's my preference. And again, like all this stuff is preference.
I didn't mention the angle of the deer as well. Like
it makes a big difference.
Big part. I mean, if he was sitting broadside like a statue at 40 yards and you got all of that target, then I'd probably feel pretty comfortable. But if he's quartering away even slightly, there's just your window just shrinks up, and I would try very hard not to make a quartering 2 shot unless I just didn't realize he was quartering slightly,
One of the things I ask myself is, will I regret this arrow if I end up putting a bad arrow in this deer? Like, will I have looked at my chain of decisions up to this point and think, well, I really should have listened to my gut here when I checked this particular box and went for it. I never want to regret an arrow on a deer. And I have on some, like I've rushed a shot, or you should have waited till they changed angle a little bit, but
ditto.
But as I'm as I age, I don't know what it is, but I am more selective in my shots.
Early on in in my bow hunting career, I was probably mid-20s, and I was at Dad's, and this deer we called Little Prince came out, and I was shooting out of a box blind that at the time the windows were just slightly too high for both Dad and I. Dad ended up nicking the window seal on the way out. It was a homemade blind, and then he even warned me of it, and I did the same thing, and I missed this deer, and he ran out, and then he turned and gave me a broadside, probably slightly quartering away shot, but it was at 50 yards, and young and confident, and I was definitely a much better shot at that time, like shot more. Yeah. And I was like, I can make that shot, and I knocked another arrow, and I shot him low. He ended up dying, but it was just a bad experience. Yeah. No, it was a bad experience. And I was like, all right, that's, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. When you see enough bad arrows, you're like, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah. And it was one of those deals that was all heat of the moment. And, I just felt confident, and I shouldn't have. I mean, I wouldn't do that now. Like, it's like, all right, now I know, let's give him another opportunity. And that even played into my mindset this year with 2S2, because the first night we saw him, he was probably 50 yards and we had plenty of shooting light. Next day it was 45 and plenty of shooting light. And then I just felt like we're in his kitchen. He doesn't know we're here. Let's see what happens. And sure enough, next night or 2 nights later, he was right there at 30 yards. I understand, some guys hunt public ground or so, it's very situational. In this area, in this spot, it was tucked away at the back end of the farm. I felt confident he wasn't messed with. Yeah. And so I was going to try to give him the time, but
it worked out.
Yeah.
Eventually. I mean, because you could have made a bad choice anywhere along that path and spooked him out of there.
Yeah. There were several opportunities to shoot him at 50 yards. And I just didn't. And so I don't regret, here I didn't shoot him with my bow. I understand that. Some guys won't hunt with a gun. They're just bow guys. I get that. But for me, I knew I had gun season, and then I knew I had muzzleloader season. So I'm okay with that. Yeah. Personally, my personal decision. Sure. So anyhow.
Well, Mark, thank you for the question. If you want to leave us a question, go to DreoUtdoors.com/podcast and then click on the send voicemail button and leave your name, location, and what you want to know from us. Wildlife word.
Let's do it.
Wildlife word is dry bite. Most of these wildlife words end up being 2 words.
Okay, I don't know this one.
A dry bite is it happens in animals with venom glands, like snakes. Sometimes they don't inject toxin into their threat. Like copperhead snakes, the cost of using their venom to defend themselves is usually too high. So a lot of copperhead bites on humans are dry.
Really?
Yep.
I don't want to ever find out.
and that is something that is a consideration. Just because a rattlesnake tags you or a copperhead doesn't mean you've been envenomated. So there you know.
Learn something new every day.
I know one of my buddies, he's in his 80s. He's been a turkey and deer hunter his whole life. Got tagged by a copperhead 3 springs ago, clearing out some leaves on a downfall, like a snag that he was going to set up for in turkeys. He thought he'd scratched some barbed wire or something. And he looked down and he's got 2 little pinpricks that are just gushing with blood. And he's like, what in the world? And then he saw the copperhead all coiled up right there by the log. The crazy thing is when his wife took him to a hospital, to the emergency room, and they told him, "Hey, we're running this research project, and there's a blind process in play here. We're going to give you have to consent to this. We're either going to give you the antivenom or we're going to give you a placebo, but you won't know, and we want to see what happens." And he's like, "I'm 81 years old. I need the antivenom." And apparently, like, finding hospitals that have anti-venom is kind of...
Is it venom?
Anti-venom. People call it anti-venom, and it's kind of like culturally caught on, but originally, properly, it's anti-venom.
Should have saved that for a wildlife word.
Crap.
All right, sorry. I was really focused on venom.
He ended up getting to a hospital that would give him the antidote.
They wouldn't?
Well, no, he had to participate in this research project. Wrong. It was wrong. And the Post-Dispatch picked up the story and ran with it. And Tony Messenger, I think, did a piece on it. So it was a pretty big deal.
Wow.
But yeah, I guess ask when you go to get treated for a snake bite, ask, are you going to give me a placebo?
And now I would have thought your story would have went the other way. He would have said, I'm 81, screw it. Give me whatever you want.
Let's let it roll and see what happens.
Yeah.
He wanted to get out for a few more turkey and deer seasons, I think.
That's selfish of him.
I just want to live.
He could have helped humanity.
So,
all right.
Yeah, watch yourself.
Oh,
watch
believe
yourself.
Me, I do. I'm afraid of snakes.
So run like a girl.
That's fine.
All right. Well, congratulations on your deer.
Thank you. I'm sorry that your season still is in the tank.
It's going to make for a great story at some point,
I guess.
Or I'm just at give up deer hunting altogether.
Yeah, well, at least till next season.
Right. All right. Well, why don't we shut this thing down? The farm stuff, we've made the announcement.
I'm headed to the ATA tomorrow, and we'll give it away at the end of this week. I'm not sure when this will air, but yeah, so I'm sure we'll have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
We're excited. It's going to be fun.
Stay tuned.
Yep. All right. Until next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace. We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by OnX Hunt, the nation's #1 GPS hunting app.